social welfare function and its types. So let us say that there are two allocations, X and Y, and there is an individual I. And individual I strictly prefer X to Y. And this would imply that the utility which individual I is getting from X is strictly more than the utility which individual I is getting from Y. So this is an individual preference. This guy is an individual preference. So social welfare function. So for example, if I want to write the welfare function, so it will be the function of all the individuals in the society, which they are functions of the utilities of all the individuals of the society, which they are getting from having the allocation X, right? Which is, let's say, dependent upon X here. So this is F U1X, U2X, so on to UN X, right? UNX. It's a social welfare function. It's a function of individual utilities. It is a function of individual utility. So what it does is that it is giving ranks to the different allocation depending on the individual preferences. So what does social welfare function do? It gives rank to different allocations depending on individual preferences. Depending on individual preferences. So if the social utility from consuming allocation X is more than the social utility from consuming allocation Y, then society prefers X to Y, right? So X is strictly preferred to Y by the society if the utility which the society gets from consuming X is greater than the utility which the society gets from consuming, right? So if social utility function of X is greater than Y, society prefers X to Y. Society prefers X to Y, right? Society is preferring X to Y. So, and you can say, let us say UI is the utility from, so UI is the utility of ith individual. U minus I is the utility of all individuals apart from the ith individual, right? So utility of all other people other than I. utility of all other people apart from I, right? Okay, so let us say there are two allocations. One allocation is X, or let's say X hat. Other allocation is X curl. So in X hat, individual 1 is getting X1 hat, individual 2 X2 hat, and so on to individual n Xn hat. Similarly, in X curl, individual 1 X1 curl, individual 2 X2 curl, and so on to individual 1 Xn, individual n Xn curl, right? The social utility from X hat would be utility which individual 1 is getting from X hat, right? Utility which individual 2 is getting from X hat, and so on to the utility which individual n is getting from X hat. Similarly, the social utility which individual is going to get from X curl is utility which individual 1 is getting from X curl, which individual 2 is getting from X curl, which individual n is getting from X curl. Okay. Achha, can I also write this in this fashion? Can I also write it in this fashion? U1 X1 hat and U minus 1, right? X hat, whatever. So what everyone else is going to consume, right? What everyone else is consuming. Let's say that is X hat, whatever. Huh? Okay. Similarly, I can write this as well. Individual 1 and apart from individual. And apart from individual. Let us also suppose that utilities of all other individuals apart from individual 1 are same, right? So whether they are consuming X hat or they are consuming X curl, let us also suppose that, right? And also further suppose that the utility of individual 1 from consuming X hat is strictly greater than the utility of individual 1 from consuming X curl, right? So in this U1 X hat is greater than U1 X curl, right? Or yahan pe X1 curl or whatever. So what you can say that the social, at least because for all other individuals, the utilities are same. For individual 1, utility from consuming X hat is more than the utility from consuming X curl. So the social welfare from consuming X hat would be more than the social welfare from consuming X curl, right? So this would imply what? The social welfare from consuming X hat is more than the social welfare from consuming X curl, right? So What is this telling you? Basically, that del wi is greater than 0. It's an increasing function of utility. Increasing. It's an increasing function of utility, right? So there are different kinds of the utility. So if the utility of one individual is increasing, of course, the welfare is increasing. Okay. There are different kinds of utility function of the social welfare function. One is classical utilitarian, or you can say Benthamite social welfare function or utility function. That is one thing. That is one thing. So what do you say? Let us say my Wx is the sum, the social welfare is the sum of utilities which individuals are going to get from consuming X. How about that? So individual, what utility individual 1 is going to get from consuming X, what utility individual 2 is going to get from consuming X, the sum of those utilities is what is the social welfare function. That is what the Benthamite social welfare function is. UIX, right? Then you can also have the weighted sum of utilities welfare function. What do you mean by this? You mean by this? You mean by this? That is A1. So here everyone is getting the equal weights. Now you have different weights. So A1 is the weight which is assigned to the utility which individual 1 is getting from consuming X. So A1 U1X. How about that? A2 U2X. So AN UNX. So A1, A2, A3, and so on to AN, they are the weights which are assigned to the utilities of individual 1, 2, 3, and so on to N. Here, everyone is having the same weight. Here, the weights are different. So A1, A2, A3. Are weights given to utilities of individuals. what you do with these utility functions, I mean, you need to understand that you're going to use this utility function in order to maximize the welfare. But how do you do that? I mean, of course, we'll have to wait for one or two more recordings in order to get to that point. So right now, I'm just defining things. Then you have min-max or Rawlasian welfare function. Min-max or Rawlasian welfare function. That's like, so here the social welfare is dependent upon the utility of the poorest individual, right? So, or depends upon the utility of the worst off agent in the economy. So what do you mean by this? So it depends upon the worst off agent in the economy, right? So social welfare is defined in terms of the welfare of the worst off individual, the poorest individual, the person with the minimum utility, right? Or when you say worst of agent, means the person with the minimum utility, right? So, and then you have Nietzschean social welfare function. Let me just see the spelling. Nietzschean welfare function. So it is an opposite of the Rawlasian social welfare function. That is, it depends upon the utility of the person with the maximum utility, the richest individual, max. Right? So these are the different ways that you can compare the individual utility functions. So each of them, they are representing the different value judgments, different ethical judgments. So should you be giving more weight to one individual? Should you be giving same weight to all individuals' utility? Should you be given the maximum weight to the person, or the decisive utility should be of the person who is the richest person, or the decisive utility should be of the person who is the poorest individual? So these are different ways of comparing individual utilities, and they're representing the different value judgments or ethical judgments, right? So the only thing is that um, the social welfare function should be increasing in each consumer's utility. So please write this, each of these. Each of these is a possible way to compare individual utility functions right? And each of them represents different ethical judgments about the comparison between different agents' welfare. So should you be giving the same weight to every individual's utility? Should you be giving different weights? So social welfare should be dependent upon the utility of the poorest individual. Social welfare should be dependent upon the utility of the richest individual. So these are different ethical judgments. So the only thing is that the social welfare should be increasing in each consumer's utility, right? So in the next class, we'll talk about the maximization of the welfare, right? So right now we have just stated the social welfare function. Now, how do you maximize it? So what exactly you do with that? That is what we want to do. So as in your consumer choice problem, utility functions were there, but then you used these utility function in order to maximize utility. So how do you do that? That is what we're going to do in the next class, right? Thank you, Beta.